Hi, everyone, and welcome. We are here today to tell you a fantastic story about edge networks, cloud, and platforms, and how that is enabling industrial digital transformation. To start off, we are going to set some broader industry context about what we see in the market. We will get to learn a little bit about Belden, and then some of the challenges and opportunities with edge and networks and cloud in enabling this industrial cloud transformation, and how Belden is addressing those challenges and those opportunities. We will take a look at a very exciting real-life case study in one of Belden's own manufacturing plants of these solutions in action, and then we will open it up to questions for the audience. So without further ado, why don't we introduce our wonderful panel here on the stage. Ram, I would like to start with you, and then Brian, and Neetu finally. Please.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ram. I globally lead the software platform and edge for Accenture, a business which really helps customer pivot to the world of platform and leverage the power of edge, right? So that's what we are driving in the market.
All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian Leeser. I am with Belden. I lead our industrial automation solutions business globally for Belden, and I look forward to telling you more as we go through the session.
And hi, everyone. I'm Neetu Kaushal. I work for Accenture. I look after our edge practice across Europe. I get to do cool things, and those cool things are driving anything that requires to be driven at real-time pace and at scale. My team, we work across retail, industrial, consumer goods, so I'm really excited about what we're bringing to the table here today.
Excellent. And finally, I'm Sid Gambier. I am with Accenture AWS Business Group, or AABG as we like to call it, and I'm really passionate about applying technologies like edge, network, and cloud to digitizing manufacturing operations, making the world a better place. And this is a great case study and story of doing that. So why don't we get into it? Ram, I'll first come to you. If you could just set some broader context based on what you see in the market and all the customers that you are in discussions with, what's happening in the market that is really compelling industrial companies to build a digital future and how they're going about it?
Yeah. So a couple of things in here, right? So digital transformation is happening across every industries, right? And today this panel is super interesting for me personally because the few industries which has caught up a bit late on the transformation, and industrial is one of the kind of industries where the transformation was very critical, but there was like inherent challenges in this, right? As we go through this panel, you will see how Belden has really overcome those challenges. But if I just take industrial as a perspective, right, a few points from my side. One, the amount of data that any industrial company or any manufacturing organization generates is huge, right? And today, if I look at it, from our data, from our research, right, the close to 75 billion IoT devices, in any industrial place you pick it up, right? So 75 billion of connected IoT devices, and each one of them can get smarter and smarter as we go along, right? So that produces insane amount of data. So that's my number one, right? The number two is most of this data that is created, right, is not going to move into the cloud. It is going to be consumed and operated at the point where it gets produced, right? So that's a very critical aspect of it, right? So that's the second part of it. The third part is as we get through this stuff, you'd see manufacturing and industrial are getting more and more into sustainable operations, and for that data becomes important, right? So industrial is in a very different motions of digital transformation compared to the rest of if you take an automotive or if you take the typical retail industry. Industrial is extremely challenging, but has insane amount of data to accelerate this transformation. So that's my first part. So if I move to the next one, right? So if I look at it, so now I have this data, what am I going to do with this stuff? How do I really accelerate my digital transformation, right? All of us have been hearing about Gen AI, data becomes important, right? All this stuff that needs to happen at the edge, right? And some of the challenges I'll walk you through, and like Neetu was saying, she has a very interesting job, and we transform many of our customers, right? To see how to leverage the power of edge. So if I look at it like 3-4 things. One, and this is something we work very closely with AWS as well, while the transformation to cloud has been happening over a period of time, what we see is not even 10 to 15% return on investments of the cloud transformation. And that's because most of the data has not moved or the power of data has not been established, right? So that's the first part of it. There's a huge data explosion, right? The kind of devices you are, connecting, right? Whether it's manufacturing, whether it's in, heavy equipment, right? There is data generated at every point, right? For us, this data explosion gives us an opportunity to do something very unique, right? So that's the second part of it. The third part of it is, right, 2 years back, right, Edge has been in the market. Edge has been in the market for the last 20 years, right? But the power of Edge has not been realized because the amount of compute and the amount of security and privacy, that is really needed to process and not push the data back to cloud, the technologies were not existing, right? So the third part of it is, how do I process this data securely and ensure that, we don't have any kind of a compromise, right? So that's the third part of it, right? The fourth part of it is, for us, data is like, there's like a lot of automation happening across, whether you take a manufacturing floor, whether you take an industrial, equipment, automation happens, right? And two parts to us. For us, we need to bring cloud to the edge, right? So that's one part. We extensively work with AWS on that stuff. The second part of it is, even if I bring it here, I need to give an uniform automation across the pockets of data or the pockets of island that happens, right? And that is where I want to move to the next slide, and that's where the power of platform comes in, right? So for us, the way we link all this together is, industry is the first part of it. Edge becomes a very critical part of collecting and processing the data, but exposing this data and bringing in insane amount of intelligence is really moving away from a typical pipeline business to a platform business, right? The companies which have been born in the world of digital native, Airbnb, Uber, Google, these guys know how to operate in a platform model, leverage the power of data, right? But if I look at industrial, which has been a very traditional pipeline business, right? You start with a production, distributing, marketing, and then, it reaches the consumer. How do I enable this with a platform model so every consumer gets an intelligent about the products he or she is buying, and how do I leverage the power of data, right? So that's where we are moving this whole thing, collecting this data, creating a unique platform model for all this collected data and exposing all this intelligence so ecosystem partners can start playing an active role, right? This is not about the data, and you will see when Brian is talking about how he has done it in Belden. This is just not about collecting data, right, and processing and doing predictive analytics, right? It is giving the power of this data through a platform to the end consumers, right, end enterprises. So that's how we are enabling this. So three aspects: industry flavor, and industrial is becoming very important in this digital transformation. Second thing is bringing cloud to the edge, right, and that's what, between Neetu and Brian, you will see how we did it in Belden. And the third part is really transforming yourself into a platform organization, right? And that's just not technology. There is a culture, operating model that needs to happen. All these three things, if they come together, you can really, just not ensure that you are getting into new revenue models, but have a very, very happy customer, right? So that's the transition path we are going through.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Ram. So with those three key points in mind, Brian, please tell us a little bit more about Belden, the past, the present, and the future.
All right, thanks, Sid. So I'm going to borrow the word for the event here, reinvent. So it's a really, I think, a good word to describe Belden, as we have reinvented ourselves several times over the last 121 years. And many people, if you're familiar with Belden, might think, oh, Belden, that's the wire and cable company. And yeah, we had a long history, 100 years. Our first 100 years we call Belden 1.0, where we're a really great wire and cable company. But we've grown through these reinventions of ourselves into so much more. If you look in like the last 25 years or so, we've gone from a wire and cable company to adding all of the components and the products that make a complete network infrastructure. So we could help our customers with end-to-end network infrastructure solutions, from the data acquisition and transmission, so of course the wire and cable, the connectivity pieces, the I/O, into the data management and orchestration. So things like routers, switches, cybersecurity devices, network management software, so that we can provide a complete end-to-end network infrastructure for our customer. And that was kind of our Belden 2.0, we call it, as you see on the slide. And now really in the last 5 years, what we've really moved into what we call Belden 3.0 and now Belden 4.0, right? And this is where we are helping our customers digitize their operations, right? We have the capabilities from getting the data out of the sensors and the machinery and the systems, using our data acquisition and transmission capabilities, to now moving that data into the right areas, collecting it, managing it, orchestrating with our data solutions we call our edge to cloud solutions built on top of the strong network infrastructure. So we're going to talk more about what that means, but I think if I can leave you with one thing today is who is Belden and what they do. We provide complete network and data solutions to help our customers digitize their operations, unlock the data, and get the data out of their systems so that they can enable the use in things like Gen AI and machine learning and things in the cloud.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Brian. And just to add a little more color to what Brian talked about, we have a quick video to show you all.
Any company that has been around for 120 years or more will tell you that in order to survive, you have to stay relevant. You have to innovate. And Belden has always spearheaded a lot of innovation. We've been a part of every major innovation that's been around. Thomas Edison was a customer of ours. We were a part of the first television broadcast. We were a part of the first computer network. We had this very fine magnetic wire that was up in the Apollo 11 in 1969, and we're in the International Space Station now. But innovation for innovation's sake is not progress. Progress is working with customers to make sure that innovation is solving the challenges of tomorrow.
For a long time, Belden first focused on making products that other companies would use as they built some kind of solution. Solutions that were solving for a specific problem. And then over time, these became more and more complex, and people were dealing with islands of solution, or islands of data, or islands of connectivity. And at that point in time, Belden said, hey, we've created the products that were used to build those sub-solutions. So if we just link those solutions with the same products, we can create a more efficient network. It's not necessarily that we are creating completely new products. We are creating completely new ways to use that technology more effectively.
Now we're in the fourth industrial revolution. Sometimes it's called Industry 4.0. And Industry 4.0 is really about using digital technologies to improve industrial processes. So using data and connectivity, you can now transform industries to create more smart and interconnected systems. And through these technologies, now vast amounts of data can be collected, analyzed, and used to transform industries to make them more efficient, to improve decision-making, and overall create more smart and adaptive systems.
If people are going to embrace automation, if they're going to embrace connectivity, it's got to help them. And so that's what we provide through those products. And if you think about an application, for example, a hotel, there are many systems. There could be 15, there could be 20 different systems within a hotel, and they don't talk to each other. If they did, then you can create a tremendous experience for that guest going into the hotel, and you also enable the hotel to manage more effectively and more efficiently.
You know, if people step out of their homes or offices, and you went out and you then took a train, for example, to the airport and then flew, and if you think about all that's happening around you, so first of all, you're in a building that has some building management services, security. You're in a mass transit environment, you're being safely transported. There's electricity coming from the grid. You go to an airport, there's a flight control system. Creating a solution that you don't even have to think about, that you don't even have to know about whilst you're using it. That's the special thing that companies like Belden do.
Excellent. I want to highlight, before we move ahead, that in that video that we just saw, the manufacturing floor, the manufacturing plant, those were Belden employees using digital solutions developed by Belden, using AWS, using the network backbone, and we're going to learn more about what actually is running. So it's super exciting. Neetu, now I'd like to start with you to tell us a little bit more about the industrial and manufacturing context. What challenges and opportunities do we see where Belden and AWS can come in and help solve those challenges? Please.
Sure. So you saw in that video, and I love this video, by the way, because it really explains the depth of knowledge that a company like Belden has. And also, within the DNA of Belden, they have traversed across different reinvention cycles, and we're in the middle of one right now. And the topic of edge becomes really important here, as well as other technologies like cloud, because what we're doing is we're helping Belden to extract specific information to process in real time, and then drive that scale leveraging AWS Cloud across the board for our clients. So a few things that I wanted to then share was, when it comes to edge, this is, it's my favorite topic, but for us, when it comes to edge, we see edge in the physical domain. So there's a connection between people, place, and also the actual technology and data itself. We see that when we're extracting some of this information, it could be in a very simple domain of a device. It could be in a gateway. It could be in a router. It could be in an on-premise server. It could even be in the network, like an AWS wavelength, for example, where you're really pushing the compute and storage into a 5G network. So imagine the video where Belden were discussing the mass transit, the trains. Imagine the trains being able to talk to infrastructure in their live high-speed environments, leveraging AWS wavelengths. So you got trains talking to infrastructure live. So these are the kinds of things that we're starting to see come about in our technology. But it doesn't come from just cool technology alone. In the context of industrial domains and manufacturing, here we're seeing it to be really complex, because here our clients have thousands of connected sensors let's say in a single plant environment. You have thousands of connected sensors. They'll probably need to support hundreds of different proprietary protocols. And then on top of that, there's going to be a variety of different physical network devices that are also going to be connected. So you multiply that then by hundreds of different plant environments, you've really got a complicated problem here. So as a client, you're thinking, how do I know when I have a problem with one of my machines coming up? How do I know that there's going to be a bun that's going to be blocking one of my conveyor belts? It hasn't quite come through because I added too much water in my dough. How do I know that there's going to be a particular issue on the network that I can sense early, because these problems start to compound and it's really hurting my business? And this is where the problem becomes really huge for our clients, and trying to get all of that data is quite hard, because today it exists in silos. And you can drive automation and really great digital improvements, but they're going to be done in slices. They may not be done in the way that we can scale, but definitely if we start to think about how you open up that data, you're able to then drive that automation at scale, but then do it in real time, and you leverage the cloud for scale, then you're onto something. And I think this is where the beauty of what Belden's technology do, where they're so strong in the OT domain, in the actual physical plant environment, where their technology is really strong. I think we've got something really strong here, because we can extract that data and we can move at pace, and then we help our clients to become AI ready. And I'm really excited about our solution here.
Excellent. So why don't we deep dive and jump in? Brian, would love for you to talk about how the network backbone allows us to build, with the Horizon software suite that Belden offers, data and network solutions to solve for some of the challenges that Neetu just mentioned.
Sure. Thanks, Neetu. I think you set that up really well. And I think about kind of our network and data solutions, and what do they really do? We're talking about, and I think Rami talked about Gen AI and ML and advanced analytics, and we have a lot of, our customers are trying to sort that out, and what's their AI strategy, and how are they going to use that to either stay competitive or be more competitive, be more efficient. And all those things, what you really need is the data, right? And the data is what makes it possible, right? And so when we talk about our network and data solutions, that's kind of where we live. And it's kind of the messy and complex part of an OT operation, right? Is getting access to the data, knowing the data you have, moving it securely and cleaning it so that it can be used by these higher level programs at the edge and up into the cloud. So for us, I think about what does Belden do in our network data solutions? I think we simplify it for our customers, right? Because this is kind of where we've been for 121 years. We know what it's at. We know how to work in OT environments, so we simplify it. We make sure it's secure. We use things like zero trust networking, network access control, integrated security features within our products. And then we allow the ability to scale. So we have a lot of customers who, in an individual plant and in certain areas, will go and they'll try to create their own system to get the data and to move the data to the edge or to the cloud. And sometimes they're successful. It often takes a long time. But one of the biggest challenges is they can't scale it because they have multiple plants or multiple lines even within the same plant. And so I think about our network and data solutions allow our customers to simplify it, do it securely, and then to scale it. And it all starts, I think, with a really strong network backbone. So we talk about our network solutions. That's really having a robust network backbone. So I've talked about the data acquisition and transmission pieces. So that's getting the data out of the sensors and the machinery and digitizing it, and then moving it into the higher level parts of the network where you see convergence, you see over the air, you see over the wire, and you see all these networks coming together. And then it moves into our data management and orchestration. So now once we have a very secure network infrastructure, now we build these edge and cloud solutions, which we call our data solutions on top of that. So we have our edge hardware platforms that allow you to have a secure device that you can run applications on at the edge. And then we have our Belden Horizon software platform, which is really the software platform that allows you to manage all the data that you have in your platform, bring it in, so collect it. It's often speaking different languages because there's different systems and control systems and different protocols. So bring that all in, contextualize it, and clean it. So then it can be consumed at the edge, or the right amount and the right time move to the cloud so that you can do multi-plant scaling of your data and do the advanced AI opportunities. So what we talk about is we work in all that data, and we want to bring that data and enable things. And it's really what we make possible for customers of AWS and other advanced programs.
I was dying to say something there. There's the power of three here on this slide, and we all love a really strong architecture diagram. It feels like it's not real if that doesn't exist, but I see the power of three here. In the domains of deep industrial environments, which have a presence for years and years, they'll be interfacing three areas which are usually quite complex. And that's where the power of three comes. It's the OT to IT conversion. That's really hard to do at scale. The second one is you have sensors that I spoke about, these thousands of different sensors and connected devices and machines. They might be connected through the wire, they might be connected through wireless, or even cellular. So that kind of convergence play of wired to wireless and cellular becomes also another area that you can't manage, because you can imagine you'll have silos of networks trying to manage the anomalies that happen within your wired network and then in the cellular. You need a convergence story there if you really want to drive that scale. And the third one is the edge to cloud, because if you're trying to drive some of these capabilities in the plant environment, and then you want to leverage the knowledge in the cloud, then you need the edge to cloud to also come through very easily. So that power of three really comes together with this solution and allows Belden to enable their clients to be AI ready.
Excellent. I think for me, the most exciting part of what Brian and Neetu spoke is scale, being AI ready, and multi-site. And that is where I think the power of these solutions come in. Now, I teased you all earlier when we were looking at the video that we were looking at Belden employees in a Belden manufacturing plant. So why don't we jump into that? Brian, please start us off and explain to our audience the legacy and the history of the plant in Richmond, Indiana, and some of the challenges that are going on there, and we'll walk through how the data and network solutions are actually adding real value to a real-life environment in the Belden network.
All right, sure. So, I mean, we thought what better way to kind of learn and prove our own capabilities than to use it in our own factories, right? We have factories all over the world. One of our largest and oldest, which we thought would be a perfect test case, is in Richmond, Indiana. It's a 100-year-old wire and cable manufacturing facility, has machinery from all different vintages and decades, a lot of it past its life. And this is a good example, I think, because what we hear from our customers is, because they hear from some other people that want to help them digitize their operations, that they need to rip and replace everything, right? And we knew we couldn't do that. So how do we digitize this 100-year-old manufacturing plant? So we thought, number one, what a great way to learn and prove our own solution. Number two, across many places in Americas and even Western Europe, the battle for factory labor is very difficult, right? It's hard to get people to fill a lot of the jobs. There's a big shortage now in the U.S. And so this was also an opportunity to figure out, for the people that we do have, how do we make them more productive? And the third thing is, as we continue to grow, right, how do we get more out of our factory? How do we expand our capacity with our existing assets and make them more productive? So for those three reasons, this we thought would be a great way to show how our network and data solutions, how we could install them, how long it would take, and how they could generate value, measurable value for our own facilities as a good use case for our customers and for our own people, I think, as well.
I was going to add here that when it comes to technology creation, it's nice, but you need to be able to test it with a client. And there's no better place if you have that environment yourself. So a technology that's going to be really ruggedized, is tested, rubber stamped by meeting some KPIs. And those KPIs, we shouldn't shy away from them. It's all about cost savings right now. Our clients, the market has significantly changed. So anything that can drive some value creation in terms of cost savings with speed, and I love that word from you, Vinod, speed is key here. That's critical for our customers, and I think bringing that capability out through this technology is really valuable. And you can see on the right-hand side here some real cost savings, time to improvements. You can also see that there's an aspect of knowledge also that's upgraded across the employees here as well. So together, this all comes through in terms of driving a connected plant that drives real-time improvements at speed, ruggedized and tested, ready to go for our clients' own domain improvements.
And there's a critical role played by AWS as the cloud platform here, obviously. What Brian and Neetu talked about is you really need a lot of complexity that needs to be solved at the edge. But then once you do that, and Belden's goal, echoing what you've said, Brian, is to make the OT industrial data a much more analytics ready, easier to consume by the cloud platforms. And this right here is the obligatory AWS Details slide at reInvent. So the picture that we want to draw here is using the Belden network backbone and the Horizon software that runs on that network backbone. We're able to provide a much more streamlined, contextualized stream of industrial data into the AWS Cloud through things like IoT Sitewise, IoT Core, and using TwinMaker to be able to drive analytics, supporting multiple use cases. You could have asset uptime as a problem statement. You could have digital twin as another problem statement, as an extension of asset uptime. And you can see here that Belden is also working with other AWS partners, as an example, Matterport, to provide that visualization of your factory floor and flowing in the data in real time through the network backbone into digital twin types of applications. So this is the solution that we have implemented at the Richmond plant, and it really is something that promotes, again, scale and multi-site deployments in a brownfield manner where you don't have to rip and replace existing manufacturing systems, and you're able to make the most of the assets in place and really extract more value from the data that's flowing through the existing network. So with this, we're actually going to do some closing thoughts, and then we will, again, open it up to our audience for questions. So as we close the discussion, Ram, I will come back to you. You started us off with 3 key points. Based on the story that we've heard, what would you like to comment, and how would you really close the conversation today?
Yeah, thanks. A couple of things, right? I still remember this relationship between Accenture and Belden started here at AWS reInvent 1 year back, right? I met up with Vinod, who's sitting in the audience, right? We had a very interesting story, and I was excited talking about platform. I didn't know too much about Belden. And then Vinod was explaining how old Belden is, right, and what's the culture of the company. And he got excited about how to really leverage the power of platform and OT and really create a truly OT platform in here, right? IT moving into the platform side is known, right? In one form or other, there could be a cultural challenge, but there is a technology to help there. OT is so difficult to do, like Neetu was pointing out. So that excitement was in there, right? So over the last 1 year, we have learned a lot, right? This is not a Belden case study to me. This is for any traditional industrial companies, right? Trying to pivot to the world of, platforms, leveraging the power of edge, right? Because there's so much of data industrial companies collect at the edge, but that is not sufficient to just go process it, right? If I don't pivot to the world of platforms, you're never going to realize the power of edge, right? So the way Brian told the story, one is they have all these edge elements, right? And Neetu nicely laid out the 3 dimensions of it. One is really bringing the OT-IT convergence. The second part is bringing cloud to the edge, right? The way we are trying to bring it. And the third one is the Horizon platform on which the whole thing is based on, right? If you look at it, the power is in that Horizon platform of how they give this whole data to be democratized at the end consumers level, right? So that's the 3 things I would nail it, right? Industrial, edge is giving the power to you, right? But the power is realized through the use of a proper platform organization.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Ram. Brian.
Yeah, so I think we talked about what we did at our Richmond facility, right? And you saw some of those numbers and some of those improvements. And we think that's just the start, right? That was just really through visualization. So there's so much more opportunity to go at our own facilities, but helping our customers. And we've already rolled out, scaled this to facilities in Canada, in China, in Germany. So we're proving the scaling. And I guess what I'm really excited about is, we talk about what we make possible. There's so much opportunity with the data that's sitting in these systems, right? And the ability to get that data and securely do it, and do it in a way that you can scale it and move it into the edge, and getting the right data at the right time to the cloud to do more of this advanced AI and machine learning and all these other things. We're just really excited about where we're at and being able to help our customers unlock that value of their OT data.
I think we're at the verge of something special with what we've talked about today. Neetu, last but not least.
I'm going to go off script now.
There was a script?
The environments that we've talked about here, they're really complex environments, right? But it doesn't mean that you will take a year to get somewhere. The environments change, the technologies change. You've seen some of the slogans from AWS, things are moving really fast and at pace. But that means we can experiment, and we can take things that we can experiment with now, in the moment now, and we can solve some specific problems, and then we can think about that scale. But because this technology is already taken up to a platform that exposes that data into systems that are important to you and your businesses, what that then means is you can experiment also at scale, and you can start showing some of that value. So my takeaway here is it's actually a lot easier to experiment than it has ever been before, and driving real-time value use cases into your business is something that we take pride in, and you can do across Belden's labs across the globe.
Fantastic, fantastic. Thank you to our panel, and thank you to you all for sitting and listening to our wonderful story here. I would now love to open it up for some questions, and I'll walk around. Whoever has any questions, please raise your hands. I'll come by, and you can chime in. And I guess while our audience is preparing the questions, one I have, Brian, for you is the solution that has been implemented at the plant in Richmond. What has been the reaction from the workforce and the folks that have been working there for years and decades? And please talk about the impact there while I walk over.
Yeah, sure. So good question. I think, as you can imagine, I think our workers were a bit hesitant, right? I think the initial reaction was, oh, is this just another kind of oversight, kind of watching what we're doing? And we really started with one line. And as they got a little more time, what the workers of the line found, it was really empowering them. It was giving them the tools and the data they needed to understand what was happening and make decisions and really optimize their own line. And it spread. So that kind of interest and that investment that, we're investing in the line, we're investing in the people and the work, right? Kind of spread, right? And then it created more of a competition between our different lines, and there was a demand for, hey, when am I going to get this, right? When am I? So what started as a bit of a hesitation really turned into a benefit, and it's created a much more satisfied workforce, right? Because they see the investment, they have the tools, they can make decisions on their own, they can optimize things. So it's really turned out to be a very positive area for us, right, in terms of the worker. And we think that's an opportunity for not just for Belden, but for other companies. As I mentioned before, right, there's a significant labor shortage for factory workers, right? And so the better experience they can have, I think the more you can attract and retain those workers, as people are going to fight for those workers in the future.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you to the audience for that fantastic engagement. We are now at time. If there's any follow-up questions, again, I would encourage everyone to visit the Belden booth, or we will be hanging around outside. Please come, feel free to come, stop by, and ask any other questions that you may have. With that, I want to thank my panel for engaging and very well thought out discussion. Ram, Brian, thank you. Neetu, thank you very much. And thank you to you all coming by, giving us some time.
Thanks.
Thank you.